All right, so we're gonna get started. I'm Paulina. Many of you already know me if you attended class. I'll be moderating today's panel. I'm an instructor for CodePath's summer course, and this is my second year both teaching and moderating. So I'm really excited to have this opportunity. And just a quick overview of the outline for today. So we'll start with introducing the panelists, and then we'll go about 30 to 40 minutes going through the Slido questions that you all submitted and upvoted. And then the last 10-15 minutes, we'll have additional follow-up questions. And yeah, we'll just go from there. Another logistical thing, if you end up having more questions during the panel, you could put them on Slido, or maybe you can reserve it towards the very end. Feel free to engage with Slido and upvote any questions that are incoming that you like. It's not meant to be static. So yeah, I would suggest you have a tab open for the Slido questions. All right, so okay, we'll get started. So the theme of today's panel, this is one of many upcoming industry panels we have outlined throughout the summer. And today's theme is Career Pathways in Tech, Exploring Engineering, Product, and Design. As we know, tech is very multifaceted and there are many different roles. So I think this is a super valuable theme. And we have 6 panelists joining us today. So I'll have them introduce themselves in a minute, but as an overview, we have Casey Collins, who's a product design manager for Weight Watchers, Amy Wu, product designer from Microsoft, Alicia Fremling, the project manager at Duo Security, Aaron Dubenyon Souza, a front-end engineer at Patient Ping, Kate LaFleur, a senior recruiter for Convoy, and Abhishek Surana, the director of organic growth at Course Hero. So why don't we kick it off with Casey, if you can unmute yourself and just introduce yourself and yeah, what you do at Weight Watchers. Oh, yes, I have to ask you to unmute. There you go.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Hey, everyone. I'm Casey Collins. I work at WW, formerly known as Weight Watchers. I am a product design manager there with a large emphasis on user experience design. I have been managing a team for a little over 2 years, and I've been in the UX field, the design field, for a little over 10 years. And I've worn all the different hats. So I saw a lot of questions about how to figure out your career path and what you want to do. I've done research, I've done design, I've done information architecture. So in that UX field, I've done quite a bit of exploration. So I'm excited to chat with you all about that.
Awesome, thank you, Casey. And I actually don't see Amy here, unless I am looking at this incorrectly. So why don't we, sorry, everyone's panel is all over the place on Zoom, so I'm trying to. Okay, I see Kate, so I'll just go ahead and throw the mic over to you. And yeah, if you could introduce yourself.
Yeah, of course. Good morning. Happy Saturday, everybody. So yeah, I'm Kate. I work as a senior recruiter with Convoy. It's a startup company based here in Seattle. My background, I've actually worked with a lot of tech companies. So think like Uber, Twitter, Facebook, all the big name companies, as well as a couple of other like more startup individual companies. So I've been working in the space for about 10 years now, very familiar with, I know there's lots of questions about how you set your profile apart, what kind of projects that would be really interested to startup companies, or how do you set yourself apart as a candidate. So yeah, I'm here to answer all of that and give you some more insights into, from a recruiter perspective, like how do we identify candidates who come from a CodePath background or even other kind of bootcamp stuff. So yeah, I'm excited to help.
Awesome, thank you, Kate. And Please forgive me, everybody, as I scroll through all the panels. This is really difficult. Just to double check, I don't think anybody can unmute themselves, right? Okay, I see Abhishek. Oh no, you disappeared. All right. Is there a way to, if you could, apologies. I just lost you. Okay. All right, Abhishek, I'm gonna unmute you now. Thank you for your patience. Okay.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, CodePath, for having me on your panel. My name is Abhishek. I've been in the tech industry for over 10 years now, and currently I'm the Director of Organic Growth at Course Hero. I'm sure several of you might have heard about us, but if you haven't, we are an online learning platform for students to access course-specific study resources, which are generally contributed by students and educators. I previously spent time as a software engineer at Graphic, which is another online platform which was acquired by Amazon for its Alexa integrations. My education is in computer science. I hold a master's degree in computer engineering from University of Florida, and I'm super excited to be here and answering all your questions and give you more insights. So excited to help.
Awesome, thank you, Abhishek. And thank you for pointing out the search bar. This makes my life easier. So Erin, I am going to unmute you so that you can introduce yourself. There you go. Oh, Erin? We can't hear you. I can't hear you.
There we go.
There you go.
Yes, my name is Aaron DeBendian Souza, and I am a front-end engineer at Patient Ping, which is a patient care coordination startup in the Boston area. I've been working in tech for, gosh, almost 6 or 7 years at this point. I've done tech support. I found my way into applications engineering, and I've done some full stack jobs, and now here I am, found my niche, and I'm happy to be here, answer any questions anyone has. Like anything anyone might want to know about how to do projects or anything like that. So here it is.
Awesome, thank you. And if Amy and Alicia are on the call, can one of you unmute yourselves and give an intro? I could not find you in the list. They might not have been able to make it, and that's okay because we still have a full panel. But yeah, last call, Amy and Alicia. Okay, we'll just move on. And I was just told that panelists can unmute themselves without me having to do it, which is great. So if you want to jump in on a question that I ask, then just feel free to unmute yourselves and take it on. So let's go ahead. All right, so we'll get started. Actually, for this first question, I would like everyone, all the panelists here to give a shot at answering it since it's the most upvoted question from all the students. And that is, what's the best way to explore different tech paths and find out what you like? So for example, front end, back end, web dev, design, products, maybe doing personal projects, internships, or classes. So again, that's what's the best way to explore different tech paths and find out what you like. Let's start with Casey, if you would like to take this on.
Yeah, sure. So I can give my perspective from my experience doing some exploration. Um, what I did in my role is I started out with something that I was really initially interested in, and had an opportunity for an internship that was research. I was doing user experience research, and I just started talking to folks in the organization who were in different roles. And people love talking about themselves. They love telling their stories. And that's one of the reasons I'm here. I love sharing that because I do feel like you can learn through sharing your perspectives and your experiences. So I reached out to a lot of people who were in roles that I wanted to try out. So I talked to designers. I talked to information architects. I talked to engineers, quickly found out coding was not for me. After I took a CodePath class and tried really, really, really hard, I'm better at the design part than I am the technical side of it. So try things out. Take classes like these, and ask questions. Just be authentically curious, and you'll learn a lot from your peers.
Awesome. And I'll have Kate then.
Yeah. So I'm a little bit different, definitely a recruiter, not so much like sitting in the seat doing the day-to-day tech. What I do find really compelling, and honestly what drew me to recruiting, was like talking to people about what and why they're interested. Like, why did they want to do UX research? What was the most fascinating parts of that position? How did that elevate their curiosity in terms of their next position? How did they approach the challenge in a very curious manner that opened up different opportunities? Like, that really is at the heart of why, who, what, when, where you should decide on what you want to do, right? What is it that really speaks to you? What do you want to spend 9 or 10 hours your whole career focused on, and really, entrench yourself in that subject and be the subject matter expert so that you are known in the industry as the individual who, has a deep knowledge or a deep background in something that is something you're passionate about.
Awesome. Thank you, Kate. And Abhishek, do you want to take a stab at the question?
Yeah. Well, I'm first of all not surprised that this is the most upvoted question, especially with so many different ways to build your career in tech. I know when I started looking for my first job, I was clueless about the differences between the different career paths. If you asked me what a site reliability engineer did, I wouldn't have been able to tell you. There are so many individual traits that define what you will be good at, like someone who is empathetic and likes to visualize things. They might be good at like UX and designing and UI career path. Someone who likes problem solving, who loves to, has a lot of patience, might be good at writing code and becoming a good developer. So individual individual traits also define where you might be good at, but it doesn't necessarily mean that your first job is what you will likely be doing for the rest of your career. I love what I do today, but it's not what I started my career with. I
Uh-huh.
did not and code for the
Yesterday.
past 5 years.
Yeah.
And sorry.
I kept it.
Sorry, I just unmuted that person.
Okay.
Continue.
So I was saying that I love what I do today, but it's not what I started my career as. I started my career as an engineer back in 2010, and for the first 3 years, I loved what I did during those 3 years. But I thought I was getting stuck, and then I moved to engineering management. In the next 3 years, helped engineers grow and mentor them into leadership roles, into roles that may not be necessarily technical in nature. And I loved doing that for those 3 years. But again, it was probably a good time for me to look for a change. And the following 3 years, I worked on business development, product development, more specifically SEO, if you guys are aware of that. And again, I love doing that today, but it's so different from where I started my career 10 years ago. So be on the lookout for what you are good at and continue to be flexible in changing your career. And one thing that should not go unnoticed in all of this is throughout your career, you are learning and you are defining what you want to be in the next few years. So the learning doesn't stop with the schooling. What I learned last year at my current job is helping a lot more today than what I did at school. So be always learning and be flexible with your career if needed.
Awesome. Okay. I'd like to echo that. I think it's a lot of people worry that they'll get stuck in the same path. If they start off as a front-end engineer, they'll always be a front-end engineer. If they start off as an iOS engineer, that's all they'll ever do. But it's definitely not true. And maybe that's something you can keep in mind when you choose a company. You can ask, how flexible is it to transition to a different role at this company? So for example, at Uber, I started off as an Android engineer for 2 years and then transitioned to backend because those opportunities were available. So don't feel like you're stuck with the first choice that you have. And lastly, I'll have Aaron unmute yourself and answer the question.
Yeah, sure. I echo that 100%. Definitely just be curious. As long as you're keeping an awareful eye on the sorts of things that you are interested in. Like for example, um, you know, if you have an eye for design, you may want to move forward with taking some online classes with design, or gearing more towards that in your internship, gaining those sorts of hard skills to be able to push you forward. But definitely, as everyone has said, like what you'll be doing at first is definitely not what you'll be doing 10 years from now. My role has changed drastically in at least the last 3 years or so. I've effectively gone from basically doing full stack development, and I figured out at some point, oh, I really like doing front end development for now. And there are lots of ways to be able to translate the skills that you learn onto your resume, which is also super, super important. Being able to find those connections to build your career path yourself, or with the help of a colleague or anyone else that helps you out with career advice like that. They can help you connect the dots and find the applicable and relatable skills to your next venture. So like, even though you did front end engineering and you think you'll always be a front end engineer, everyone will always see you as that. Maybe there are some small projects you could do in your spare time or at work that that you would be able to highlight on your resume that would be able to show other recruiters that you're interested and fully capable of doing those things as well. So.
Thanks, Aaron. Yeah, this was a super detailed answer. I also want to, since we had 2 panelists who couldn't make it, maybe I'll be like the 5th ad hoc panelist, because I want to answer this question too. And so I've been in industry for 5 years now. And I remember when I was a student, I would go to career fairs and I would hand a recruiter my resume and they would ask me, oh, what do you want? Do you want front end, back end, full stack, mobile? And I just sat there, I just stood there and I froze because I was like, I don't know what I want. I'm only like a sophomore. Just hire me. I'll do anything. But they would ask me like, what do you want? And I'll maybe add it to the back. And then I realized that I didn't know. So I always opted for this generalist because I didn't know. And that's totally okay. If you don't know, just maybe tell the recruiter generalist. And B, I realized a lot of my CS classes in undergrad were so theoretical and abstract that they were not actually teaching me how to build web apps or how to how to use different frameworks that were actually used in industry. So I had to go out of my way, as many of the panelists mentioned, to do my own personal projects and to do that learning outside of the classroom. So absolutely do personal projects, internships. I found doing hackathons to be really helpful for me because you get a chance to get your hands dirty in everything. So that's when I learned that I hate web dev because I did a hackathon where I developed a web application. And then also, if you have trouble finding internship, reach out to nonprofits and say you're willing to do pro bono work, like for no pay. You build a website for them, or you want to build an app for them, and they'll gladly take your help. And that's a really great way for you to not only get experience, and figuring out what stack you like or what role you like, but a way to help out. So those are just my tips. Okay, I see a lot of questions coming off in the chat, so I'll try to revisit them maybe every 10 minutes just to keep the flow going of the panel. And the next question is, how did you, okay, so this question was partially answered by some of you, so not every panelist has to answer, so just unmute yourselves if you want to jump in. But the question is, how did you figure out or realize what kind of career you wanted in the tech industry? I guess maybe what was your aha moment that this is what you wanted to do?
I'd like to elaborate on that. I guess maybe answer that with a question. Is that like development in general, or just the current position, or what's the interpretation of that? I guess, or can I just take it as I see it?
I interpreted it as like, when did you realize you wanted to specialize in one thing? So maybe from that angle.
Okay. In short, trying out things that I did not like. That is definitely a way that I figured out what I do actually like. I have a long list of things that I would really rather not do in tech. That in short is because I myself, I'm a self-taught developer, and there's a lot of, I guess, climbing up the ladder that I had to do to find these sorts of positions that aligned a little bit more with what I actually wanted out of my career. Funnily enough, this is one of the first positions that I've felt extremely settled in. And it's all through trial and error. I figured out, oh, this is how you ask questions in an interview. These are the sorts of things that these are the sorts of bits of information you need to know that'll help you make the decision that you need to. It helps to be extremely, extremely detailed in your questions in an interview. I can't express that enough. That's one side of it. Anyone else?
I had a thought I would share too. I kind of want to piggyback off of what you were just saying, Erin, about trying things out and figuring out for yourself what it is that you're looking for out of your role, and kind of bring in what Abhishek was talking about earlier about knowing that your first role doesn't have to be your final or only role. So for me, I had a great opportunity to learn from my parents and the people around me to figure out that I don't have to make a decision today about what my career will be and be that for forever. My parents, grew up and they were always growth minded before growth minded was probably a term that they knew. But we would sit down at the dinner table and we would problem solve together, even though we didn't realize that that's what we were doing. When I reflect on it now, I'm like, oh, that's where I got my curiosity from. My dad was a manager and my mom was a leader in her practice as a nurse. And they both, in later years of their life, decided, you know what, I don't like the job I'm doing. It's not it's not who I am anymore, or who I want to be. And they both went back to school. My mom became a doctor. She was like, I want to, up level my career and I'm going to become a doctor. And my dad said, you know what? I've been a print designer for 30 years, managing people, and I love that. But I also want to teach. And so he went back to school to become a teacher. So for me, how I figured out what I wanted to do, I think came directly from them, that problem solving that we were doing at the dinner table. Like, my dad was managing people and he'd come home and he'd be like, oh my gosh, what is going on? How do I solve this? We're all humans, right? Like, how do I solve this? And I was like 10 years old, So he was bringing that home. We were having those conversations. And I think that is what drove me to that problem solving and leadership path. And then having them show me that it's okay to say, you know what? I'm completely going down the wrong path. And so I started out in research. And as I mentioned, I talked to a lot of people about different roles, and I put those hats on. I said, hey, do you mind if I shadow you? Can I go to that whiteboarding session? Can I help talk to that engineer about XYZ? What does that database do? What are APIs? I just asked a ton of questions to really learn from other folks, and that really helped drive my perspective around what my career path would eventually be. So I went to school and I took classes, and I was just, again, authentically curious. And that was what helped me build on where I wanted to go.
If I could add to that, that was exactly like the type of kind of conversation I would want to have if I was looking for somebody to hire, right? Like, walk me through how you got in your current position and then how you took the steps to get to where you were looking or you are on your path to go. And a lot of that starts with, like, I know there's been some questions about networking, and there's been questions in the chat here about how do you kind of move and figure out different areas of the business. Like, for the most part, if you're lucky enough, your peers and your coworkers and even people that you've taken classes with will be there to explain and help you understand what you don't understand, or at least give you an opportunity to be exposed to a different area that you are interested in. So just raising your hand and saying, I want to learn more because of X, Y, and Z, and being able to come with a reason behind why you're interested, right? It's one thing to be like, yeah, I want to know everything. It's another to be like, actually, this is a portion of the business or the portion of tech that I'm seriously considering or really interested in. And that's why I would love to be included. I'd love to learn more. I'd love to sit side by side with your manager or your coworker or somebody even not on your team. That happens all the time. And I think that's the best way to just start with your own network. And that leads to newer relationships, to different companies, to new experiences, and hopefully the kind of tech that you're interested in.
Yeah, I agree. If I were to add, for me, my first job was simply to ensure I'm working on something related to my background. I have spent 6-8 years in this technical background, learning to code, computer science. I wanted to give that a shot and make sure I fully understand this industry, and I'm giving myself an opportunity to succeed in this area. What I realized is, as I was continuing to work as an engineer, going back home, I was spending time in understanding how can I improve traffic to this site using my technical prowess. That was not directly related to what I was doing during the day, but over time, my career path was decided by what I was doing going back home after work and where my passion was. And then slowly I started to incorporate that into my day-to-day, and talking to my manager, talking to the CEO, CTO, and see, hey, how can I help in this area? I know I'm working on back end here, but here are a few things that I'm very curious about, I'm passionate about, I'm excited about, and I would love to help. And that is how slowly but steadily I moved into the role that I am currently in, where I'm 100% focused on building the website, getting traffic to the website, and it's so different from where I started. but it is still using a lot of my background in computer science and engineering and math and learning databases and SQL. All of those have been super critical and helpful in me being successful today. But again, it is so different from where I started. And if I think about how I got into what I'm doing today, it was mostly about what really excited me when I'm not working and what was I focusing on during my off-peak hours. And it was the area that I'm currently working on today.
Awesome. So before we move on to the next question, I've been keeping track of the chat box. Jose had a question it's pretty related, so I'm just gonna pluck that one. How would you recommend trying different roles once you start working? So he says, for example, you're currently an Android developer. How do you change to a web developer in terms of how to gain the skill set? And my answer to that is, let me just put my video. When you start working, oftentimes there will be projects that come up and maybe they'll need more resources. So for example, I think my second year working at Uber, I was an Android developer, but there was this project that came up and they were short on backend engineers. So I just volunteered myself to do the backend work in addition to the Android work because I thought, hey, this is a good idea to learn backend. And that was really great. If that opportunity is not available, ask your manager and say, I'm interested in exploring, web dev. Is there something I could work on? Or find a mentor within the company that could help you acquire those skill sets when you want to switch stacks. And also, most companies have really, really awesome documentation, internal documentation on how to pick up these skills. So you could just set some time aside after work or during your lunch break to read through the documentation. Yeah, I just wanted to answer that question. If anyone else wanted to answer Jose's question, because I thought it was a really good question. Otherwise, we can move on. Okay.
Go
Go ahead, Aaron. Oh wait, was somebody?
It was Aaron. I think you're on mute again. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. Yeah, I wanted to touch on something. This is a really, I guess, important question that was asked, especially for self-taught developers. And I just wanted to give that some shout out time. Definitely, Raziel, I would like to say that building a solid portfolio is definitely key to taking a self-taught route to software programming. I would definitely I can link to some resources for that. Some are paid, some are unpaid. I'll link to those in the chat. But definitely, I would try just building small projects. Try to automate something that you do very often. Just go for broke, build a to-do list. Make it the most full-featured to-do list you've ever seen in your life. I was lucky enough to have a friend going through Launch Academy at the same time that I was learning, and so I learned about this concept of what they call a breakable toy. And it's basically some sort of web application that has X number of features, a certain number of data models, and it's basically just like a full-featured web application that you can stick on your resume and say, hey, I just built a full stack product and I shipped this. This is my work. But I'll definitely hop off to the chat to offload those resources for those of you that are interested in that as well.
Awesome. So in the interest of time, we'll move on to the next most upvoted question on Slido. If I could open my... Okay. The next question is, what would you say makes applicants stand out the most? Is it comprehensive portfolio websites, multiple independent side projects, good grades, great interviews, etc.? So I think this is a really great question from both a recruiting standpoint and maybe, yeah, as engineers too. I've had to interview other engineers, and I'll answer this question after the panelists. But Casey, do you want to give this question a stab first?
Sure. And I'm super interested in what Kate has to say, and the other folks who help as well. But as a manager, what I'm looking for, outside of the hard skills of design, because that's what I'm usually hiring for, I'm looking for somebody who can communicate well, and that doesn't mean you have to be an extrovert. I often need my more senior roles to be great storytellers, and I need to see that they are willing and have been able to build relationships in the past. So what that actually means tactically for my candidates of any level in your portfolios, I want to see that you've done problem solving. I want to see that you have solved a problem, not just your process, you know? And any role you've been in, you've helped solve a problem. Any code that you've put together, you have helped solve a problem in some way. Tell me your contribution and how you worked as a team to achieve that, whether it was in school or in an organization. I also want to see that you worked well with others. So I will ask a lot of questions around how you worked with a PM or an engineer, a QA person, a backend developer. I'll ask those scenarios to see what those relationships were like, and I'll ask you to tell me a story about that. And then, of course, I wanna see that you have at least the foundations for solid communication. So again, that doesn't mean you have to be an extrovert, but you do have to be a strong communicator to be a designer. And I want to see that you are articulating your problem solving approaches well, and that you're willing to put the effort into the things that you aren't strongest in. So if you can tell me that story too, I'm interested in all of those things. So that's what I will say from a management perspective, what I'm looking for.
Awesome. And I think that students are really curious too on what to put on their resumes, because that's a question that I get a lot. Abhishek, do you want to answer this question? I'll give you a chance.
Yeah, sure. So as a manager, there are a few things. I guess this question is trying to ask how to stand out on the resume, and then how do you potentially stand out during the interview process. On the resume, it's typically what we look for is what you did most recently and not several years ago. And for students, it's your most recent projects, but not only projects at school, but side projects. Where are you showing your passion, and are you going above and beyond? Good grades are more critical earlier in the in your professional life cycle versus later. When we are looking at resumes today, we actually don't almost never even look at the actual school or grades, especially with people who have 3 or 4 years of experience. It's your last couple of years that matters the most in terms of what your next role could be. Now, during the interview process, besides all of the specific requirements for that role and the skills required there, what we are really looking for is someone who has a growth mindset. They need to be not only able to achieve what is expected from that role, but can go above and beyond in terms of improving themselves, improving their team members, helping out not only grow their own skills, but thinking about the company and the team as a whole, being collaborative, being gritty, not giving up. And another thing that we look at during the interview process is have they failed, and how they treated themselves when they failed. There have been times when we, not for just this one reason, but we decided to not move forward with the candidate because they didn't have a good enough story for when they actually failed and how they treated themselves during those times. So be open and candid about that, and showcase the fact that when there were these hardships or obstacles, how did you overcome that? And that shows a lot about your character, your grit, your ability to grow yourself and build your skills. So um, in depending on the situation and the kind of interview, be vulnerable and showcase your mistakes as well.
Aaron, do you want to answer this question before we go to Kate?
Sure. Yeah. Basically, what I would look for is like there's a certain amount, like Abhishek said, there's a certain amount of candor that that goes into an interview. There's a certain amount of authenticity. Definitely not. Definitely don't be afraid to express your mistakes and there is this whole dance to an interviewing process as well, and so like learning the process and the language of the interview process helps you express your ideas as best as you can to any recruiter you may speak to, because there are certain things they're looking out for, and you want to make sure that yours as I guess as expressive as possible. Additionally, honestly, just being a super fun, personable person, you know, like just letting your personality shine through in the most, like I said, authentic way possible. I like to think of the interview as the kind of the final frontier to a job. If you can get the if you can get the interview, you can most likely get the job. If you can show that you're, you know, a bright enough candidate, which everyone really is. So if you just let that shine through, then yeah.
Another quick thing I would like to add to stand out on the resume is not necessarily be generic in how you describe your project. Like, I worked on this, I use these tools. That, I think that's good, but try to highlight what within that project mattered to you and what you improved. Did you improve the site speed by X milliseconds? Or did you improve a certain metric by X percentage? Or did you learn a new technology to help complete this project? So try to highlight specific aspects of the project that might be quantifiable, relatable to what you're looking for.
Awesome. And last but not least, Kate, to answer this question from a recruiter standpoint.
Yay, awesome. I was taking a lot of notes from my, other panelists here. I do fully wholeheartedly believe everything that they said, totally agree. Some of the things that were like reoccurring themes were solid communications, and like having the ability to exemplify or expand on your individual impact within a project, a team, anything like that. A lot of times from my hiring managers, and this is at any other company or any company that I've worked with, right? Even if I'm just an agency recruiter or an internal recruiter, like the ability to communicate effectively is the number one issue that we have with candidates, right? We actually follow the STAR method. So what I would recommend for everybody who's interested in looking at an opportunity in the next 6 months to 2 years, whatever, go review the STAR method. It's situation, task, action, result, and then form your responses in accordance to this method. You're going to basically line out the situation that you stepped into. What were the tasks that you needed to do to make sure that you were contributing to the position, or what kind of actions were you doing that was given to you by your manager? And then what was the end result? How did you individually impact that particular project or contribute to the business's end goal or the mission? That really allows you to step out from like you as an individual and more about your skill sets. I and my skill sets were able to make this impact on this project because I have been doing these things for however long, or I've had an opportunity to raise my hand and get introduced to the project and think a little bit more creatively. So that is probably the best thing that I could share with you during today's panel. Is just go review the STAR method and practice. I think interviews should be practice. You should take time to read through any written assignments that were asked by you. Make sure that they are legible, like they're understandable. A lot of times, you know, candidates, including myself, I still have to work on my communications, and I'll have people from my teammates to people that I work with, even if we're coming out with like a document to be shared, it doesn't hurt to have second eyes. Like, I think at the end of the day, make sure that you take the time to put your best foot forward, and that communication is the very first thing that people are going to consider when they're looking at your resume, how you're describing your projects, etc. So that's just one thing that I wanted to mention. Certain authenticity, again, that kind of comes directly from your ability to communicate. How can you communicate yourself effectively to your potential hiring manager, to your recruiter, to the people that you're, hopefully if you eventually get the job, the people sitting next to you, like how do you maintain authenticity through your communication? So at the very key, I would really recommend spending a lot of time on how you present yourself and how you communicate to external parties. And then there was one other thing that I wanted to mention. There was a question in chat about like how much time you should spend in a particular role. What I would say, things are so different now than they were in January. Like the job market is completely different, and we don't really know what that's going to equate to in terms of longevity or like teams and positions, whether the employment's going to work on a contract basis versus full time. Like there are just a lot of variables that we don't know. So again, what I would recommend is spend the time that you think is appropriate. And once you identify if that role is not the right fit for you, then speak up and do something about it. At the end of the day, what I tend to see the most when I'm recommending a candidate is like, what was the driving factor for that particular position? At the end of the day, there's not going to be a perfect position for everybody at all times, right? But the ability to communicate why that wasn't the right role, why you decided to make your decision, what you did gain or contribute to that role, and how that can equate to like the position you're looking for next, all of that is perfectly fine. So whether it's 3 months to 2 years to 3 years, like it doesn't really matter. What really matters is how you take your experience and then equate it or be able to communicate or expand on it with another employer or with somebody else, which again is the communication piece.
Awesome. Yeah, it's funny because does anyone know that meme that's like, I need job experience to get a job, but I need a job to get experience? That was the conundrum I faced as an undergrad. And last summer, I had a lot of my students message me really disheartened and say, I didn't even pass the resume screening process. What did I do wrong? So in week 9 and 10 of this course, we're gonna have some review material as well as really revisiting kind of what Kate said of the STAR method. We'll go over how to practice behavioral interview questions. We'll go over more detailed resume tips. So don't fret, that will be coming up in the next few weeks. But just a preview to that, I would add on, in addition to the amazing advice all the panelists gave, I would really emphasize side projects and putting them up on your GitHub portfolio and linking that on your resume. That stands out a lot. Right now, if you have trouble finding a side project, think about the current events that are happening in our life right now. We've got COVID and we've got the Black Lives Matter movement. There's plenty of things you can do around those two things if you want to do something really meaningful and impactful. I would also say leadership positions. I find stand out on resumes. Like if you were a TA for a CS class, definitely put that down on your resume because it stands out. And then my last pro tip is, if you're applying for a specific company, let's say Spotify, you want to be a front-end developer for Spotify, spend some time over the weekend playing around with their API, like hack together something that uses the API of the company that you want to apply to, because that'll really make you stand out and impress the reviewers. Okay, next question is, what should new grads look for in a company? What makes a good company? Is it learning opportunities, culture, job advancement? This is a really great question and lots of layers. I will leave it to whoever wants to take a stab first.
I could speak to that if that's okay. I'll make it brief. Um, when looking at like a future employer, like what kind of company, at least from my perspective, I always go back to the mission of the company. Like why is this company doing what it's doing? At the end of the day, if that speaks to who I am as a person, then of course I'll go explore further. And then I look into like, what's the actual day-to-day going to be like, career opportunities, what kind of cross functionality am I going to have as an individual? Where can I expand my own skill sets? Yes, recruiting is kind of what I do on a day-to-day, but I'm also looking at like further HR strategies, or, I mean, I know that's not necessarily tech, but it gives you a little bit more of an opportunity to explore and expand a little bit with what I'm doing from the day-to-day. But at the end of the day, I'm not really, and I'm very fortunate to work with some pretty awesome companies. But when I do start looking for new employment, my very first question is like, okay, does this company exemplify who I am as a person? Do they have that same kind of mission statement that I can really get behind? Because if that's not the case, I'm going to have a real tough time getting up on Monday morning and being like, oh, here I go to my job that I'm not really excited about, you know? So I think at the end of the day, the mission of the company and how they treat their employees, what kind of culture are they trying to cultivate? What's the impact of this, you know, X, Y, and Z dollar company? How does my role affect that? How do I contribute to the larger whole, as opposed to like, you know, what I'm looking for just myself? Because I think at the end of the day, when we have this sense of community with the people we work around, it's a different conversation than just a Monday to Friday kind of thing.
Yeah, I can take a stab at this as well. I have two different answers. One is like a more professional answer for such panels, and another one is what I would tell my daughters. I'll start with the first one. It's very simple for me. Looking at two things when joining a company: is the company growing? What does the future of the company look like? And is that heading in the right direction? And the second is, do I see growth opportunities for myself? Is that the team that I'm going to be joining, is that growing? How do the leaders of those teams describe the future of this team? And do I see alignment in growth opportunities for myself? So two things there: the company growing, and do I see growth opportunities for myself? And that's the typical professional answer I would give. But what is also truly important, and I would tell others, my friends and others, is look at the culture of the company. It is extremely important that you join a company that is, you don't walk into the office because you want to go there and work. You want to walk into the office because you want to enjoy working at that company. And like, for instance, for me, even though I might be spending 10, 12 hours in the office, it should be fun. It should be collaborative. It should be something that I enjoy doing. Every single day for me, it is very important to have at least 1 hour of some kind of like enjoyment and game time, or board games or video games or ping pong. All of those matter to me, in addition to contributing to the growth of the company. So having fun, and if that's important to you, making sure that you gain that satisfaction from the company that you're joining. It is also important to join a company that that supports additional learning beyond what you are working on. So, for instance, Course Hero provides every year a $5,000 stipend to all of its employees to pursue additional learning that may or may not be directly related to your role, but helps expand your skills and technical prowess.
I want to answer this question too. So a lot of students go to Glassdoor for a good like indicator on what it's like to work for a company. I actually would say that's useful, but it could be really biased because a lot of people who go on Glassdoor to leave reviews are usually angry from what I've seen. So go and like reach out to someone who actually works at that company through LinkedIn and just say, hey, can we just do a quick like grab coffee? Well, okay, there's COVID, so you can't grab coffee, virtual coffee, quick phone call. And most of the time they'll be willing to and like let you pick their brains. If you don't know anyone at that company, just, yeah, cold reaching out. I would also say a good indicator of like a healthy company culture is look at the tenure of the employees. If you see that employees only last like 1 to 2 years at that company and then they end up going somewhere else, that might be a red flag. If attrition rates are high, is there something going on? Why are engineers not staying at this company for longer than 2 years? Is it burnout? Is it, leadership? So that tenure is one thing I look at. And again, there on week 9, we're gonna go through review like questions to ask your interviewer at the end of the interview. Because at the end of the interview, you usually get 5 minutes to answer anything, ask your interviewer anything. And this is a really good opportunity for you to drill down on the company culture and get more insight into what it's like to work at that company. And again, we'll have a comprehensive list for all of you in week 9, but just to preview, some of those questions are, do you feel empowered to ask for help working at this company? How do you see yourself growing here? If you could, this is one I ask, if you could wave a magic wand and change one thing about this company, what would it be? I get so many interesting answers to that question. Really transparent and honest answers too.
Can I add to that, Paulina?
Yeah.
Just real quick, because I know we're almost at time, but I wanted to add something that almost every one of these panelists has said. Abhishek said he's looking for growth, he's looking for additional learning, or at least he spoke to those because it sounds like those are important to him. And so I would encourage everyone listening to this and thinking about what company to look for is to define for you what is important. For me, it's definitely growth. But that can translate into what good means for you, because it's going to be different for everyone, right? I could love working in a really big corporate company, and you might really love working with a small startup team. So you have to look internally and figure that out for yourself and figure out what your personal values are so that you can do what Kate mentioned and say, is that mission and vision something that aligns with my personal value? I work at WW because I want to help all humans feel well, feel good. I want to help them in their lives. WW fully aligns with that. Whether I'm having a bad day or I got a new boss and I'm not really sure because of a reorg, I will stay. I will push through because I know they align with my values. I know that I have what I need and what is important to me in that role. So do some personal reflection as well, and I think that will get you to a point where you can find those rich answers in your interview process. Why do you want to work for this company? Like Kate was mentioning earlier, like good communication skills. You can find those stories within yourself. You have it. You just need to do some reflection. So I just wanted to add that.
Can I chime in?
Yeah, of course.
Oh gosh, my answers that I have to this question are kind of a little multifaceted. There's kind of this idealistic answer that a lot of us have sort of elaborated on. I guess from my background, I have walked away a little bit with more of a realistic, pragmatic approach to the effect of, okay, take for example, you have a graduate of something. You went through some sort of learning. Now you know what you know. I consider that graduating. And now you're looking for a job, and I do realize that getting your foot in the door, especially for software engineering, is a very tough endeavor. I definitely do want to impress upon everyone that you may not get exactly what you want right out the gate. But what everyone else does say, it does stand true. Look out for company culture, look out for things that do align with your value. Like I would say, always keep your mind open to possibilities. sometimes you can't find the unicorn position that you sought after, but there are a lot of places that may fit the bill if you're open to it. Additionally, yeah, if you can do that, then yeah. Oh no, I lost my train of thought. Never mind. I'll stop there. But I guess that's my 2 cents to what everyone else has added.
Awesome. We are at a time. It makes me sad because the next question was really cool. It was like, what advice would you give to your younger self? Like, ooh, do we have time? No, it's okay. I don't want to. Yes? Well, if the panelists do, I don't want to hold you up. If you'd like to stay for that last question and then we'll wrap it up.
I'm good.
That was my favorite question
Yeah.
of all that I saw. So I'm really excited to chat about that one.
Okay, Casey, you can go first. What advice would you give your younger self? Well, the question was actually specific to coding, but I think we could generalize it too. It's a really good question.
Yeah. And, funny enough, we talked about prepping for things earlier, and I did a whole bunch of prepping. And I think just for this moment, right? Because you all are taking your time out of your Saturday mornings to hear us. We should be careful with that time and use it well. So I think some of the things that I look back on and probably regret a little bit are just being nicer to myself, realizing that I'm in a journey where I'm learning, realizing that I don't have to have all the answers right now, and that I probably shouldn't. When I was 23, I graduated with 2 master's degrees and thought it was 2008, 9, 10 when I was entering the workforce truly. And I remember thinking, how in the world am I going to get a job? And I was only defining my worth and my value as a human fully. If I could get a job and if it was a good job and it had to be good paying and I wanted to be able to tell everybody about it, right? I would go back to that person who I was then and say, lady, you don't have to have it all figured out right now. Explore. This is all an exploration. That's all life is. It's an exploration to figure out who you are and what you want to be. So if you take that perspective of that growth mindset that we all hear about and truly embrace it and say, it's okay. I'm well in this moment. I'm good in this moment, or I'm not. What do I need to do for myself to be well? And how do I move forward in that moment, especially when you experience those failures? Did an interview a few weeks ago and it just did not go very well for the side project I was hoping to get to work on. It did not go well. I was embarrassed afterwards. We all have had these moments, but you need to care for yourself in that moment and figure out what you learned from it. And those are the learnings I want to give back to my younger self, or that tenacious 10-year-old sitting at the kitchen table with my parents, trying to solve problems. It's all going to work out. So.
I want to second that 3,000%. It will work out. You will get where you need to. I was definitely a lot harder on myself as well than I really should have been. I mean, for all things considered, I'm in software now, but I also went to a conservatory to study jazz. That's not related at all. It's not anywhere where I thought I would be at the beginning of my tenure there. So, so definitely just keeping an open mind and being really, really kind with yourself and just enabling yourself to just be as curious as possible. That's very important.
Sorry, I was responding to some of the chat didn't collect my thoughts. But to think about it loud, what advice I would give to myself is um, is not focus on completing stuff, but focus on learning. It's okay to get a lower grade or fail on an exam. I mean, ideally, you would like to have the best of both worlds, but it is important every project, every day you go to class, every day you work on something, that you are learning and improving yourself. And some of the mistakes that I made was, okay, let me get a good grade, let me complete the task, let me move on to the next thing, and may have at times forgone the learning opportunity. So don't just try to complete stuff at the cost of learning.
Oh, I want to interject one other thing. You will get your first job. You will feel like they shouldn't have hired you. You will feel like, I don't have the skills to be able to do this, and everyone around me is a software genius, and I I don't belong here, basically. Imposter syndrome is a very real thing. Definitely look into it. Definitely look into how to combat it. Um, I wish I got a grip on that sooner.
I would plus
I
one to
don't
that.
know. Kate, I was just going to say, I don't know if anybody actually gets over imposter syndrome. It is a continual thing. It's a practice of self-care.
Right. I definitely still struggle with that. Yeah, the biggest advice that I would give myself is just, I know Casey, you talked about this too, like patience. Your first job is not going to be your end all be all to your career, but it takes building blocks to build out a whole like future. So like, I guess I want to just take a chill pill and like relax in my earlier stages. I feel like I had just run myself ragged. And I mean, it's great, right? It's definitely an opportunity to learn. I approached that challenge and I succeeded with it, which is great. But at the same time, like there's just so much pressure to be like the person that you want to be from your first like couple of years of employment. And that's just, it's absurd to think that or expect that. I think at the end of the day, give us all like a break. My executives were talking about this last week, and it's just like, this particular point in time of history is a great, excellent opportunity for empathy towards yourself, towards others, to the people around you. And just, I don't know what, that really spoke to me. And I still work on the imposter syndrome, like on a daily basis sometimes. I just have to remind myself to breathe, and you know, it is what it is. It's fine. And I think at the end of the day, as long as I approach it with an empathetic kind of point of view, and I still strive for my best work, and I want to learn in a continual fashion and like be obsessed with the problem that I'm trying to solve from a high level, as opposed to the individual task that I can do today. I think for me, that's really what I should have been doing when I was, a lot younger, but I was still too busy trying to be right for everybody, which was stupid. So yeah, that's the patience is really kind of what I would start preaching, and I've tried to start preaching to myself.
Wow, these are so powerful. I'm like, I have nothing really to add. I would just say everyone else is just as lost and confused as you are. And yeah, we're all just trying our best to figure out this crazy thing called life. So yeah, don't be too hard on yourself. Really powerful messages. So thank you all for staying 10 minutes overtime. I know there's a lot of unanswered questions in the chat, and we only got through 4 Slido questions out of like 20, 30. So we have the LinkedIn profiles of all the panelists, but if the panelists want to give their own like work email or personal email, if the students can reach out to you, totally optional, but you can put it in the box if you want, because I know there's a lot of questions specific to each panelist. And to all the students, I know we didn't get through all your questions, but rest assured, we're going to have more panels coming up this summer, and as well as lecture sessions specifically designed to answer questions around salary negotiation, resume, personal projects. So don't fret, we got you. Yeah, so thank you all again, and this is recorded, so if you all want to go back and watch this panel, you can. We'll be uploading soon. So again, Thank you all for coming. Thank you to the panelists for sharing your insight. Have a beautiful weekend. It's really sunny outside, so I'm gonna go outside. But yeah.
Happy